Earlier last week, Del Rey published the first 8 chapters of Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. This will be the first novel released by Del Rey in the High Republic franchise. So today I figured I would go through and give my breakdown of each chapter and see what we can learn from this glimpse into the High Republic. I've broken this video down by each chapter, so if there's a particular chapter you're looking for, check out the time codes down below. Obviously, spoilers ahead. Chapter 1 starts up as Part 1, The Great Disaster. We open up on a ship known as the Legacy Run, a Caniff Yards Class A modular freight transport, which is on a large enough scale to transport both cargo and passengers. We spend most of this chapter with the captain of the Legacy Run, Hida Cassett, who takes us through her point of view of the ship as she walks through the corridors during light-speed travel. We don't learn much about her, aside from her starting out as a fighter pilot as a member of the Malastare Sullus Joint Task Force. The majority of this chapter revolves around Hida reminiscing on old trips she has taken, and her perception of the different types of passengers she is transporting, all on board to start new lives in the Outer Rim. Upon returning to the bridge, alarms start to go off as the crew discovers that something is directly in their path along the hyperspace lane. This begins to concern Captain Cassett as she thinks that lightspeed collisions in established lanes simply cannot happen, and that it is mathematically absurd. However, after learning that impact is only 10 seconds away, she takes control of the ship and steers off course to avoid the obstruction. Unfortunately, the Legacy Run has seen better days, and this maneuver causes the ship to rip apart while still in hyperspace, leading us to the beginning of the Great Disaster. Chapter 2 brings us to the Hetzal system in the Outer Rim, where we are introduced to 2 scan techs from a monitoring station. One is a third-class Mirielin named Mervyn Getter, and the other is a second-class worker named Val Kareen. We are unfamiliar with her species. Throughout this chapter, we learn about their goals and aspirations, as Mervyn is trying to work up the courage to take Sella out to dinner. Sella is a scarlet-skinned Twi'lek who works at a local tavern on the Rooted Moon, not far from where he lives, while Val spends her shifts reading Jedi romance stories on her datapad. She also doesn't seem to care much about her work, as she makes Mervyn do everything because she is in a class above his. They both become concerned after their scanners begin picking up multiple unscheduled entries coming in at near light speed, starting out with 10 anomalies and turning into numbers that their system cannot count. They are able to get a system-wide distress signal out, but are unable to escape as one of the objects erases the monitoring station from existence. We get to learn a little more about the Hetzal system in Chapter 3 as we end up in Aguirre City on Hetzal Prime, where we meet Minister Eka, who is currently in a meeting to discuss the reasoning behind this system-wide distress call. This chapter is a constant argument going back and forth between Minister Eka and other counselors on what the distress call could be, and if it's real, what should they do. After discovering that several anomalies are headed towards the Hetzal system at near light speed, they agree that evacuation is necessary. Unfortunately, the people of Hetzal have lived through so many false alarms that the majority of the people don't seem to care. They believe that the alarm is fake and that they have nothing to worry about, while others fear for their safety and try to find passage off-world. Minister Eka tries to suggest shooting the objects down, but the planetary defense systems aren't what they used to be. Security Chief Borda explains that at one point they may have been able to defend the planet, but system security hasn't been a priority lately. With the entire galaxy at peace, most of the system's credits have been put to agricultural use. Minister Eka then proceeds to put out several evacuation holos to the people of the Hetzal system, as well as a system-wide distress call. Thankfully, the distress call is picked up by Jedi Master Avar Kriss, who says that help is on the way. Chapter 4 opens up in space aboard a Republic emissary-class cruiser known as the Third Horizon. It is described as a truly beautiful masterpiece of a ship able to do anything the Republic needs. In this case, sending aid to the Hetzal system. Aboard this ship is Jedi Master Avar Kriss. She is described as a 30-year-old woman wearing a simple white tunic that is ornamented in gold, which is covered by a white cape. Her lightsaber is also described as being made of silver-white electrum with a spiraling incised line of bright green sea stone that runs up to the crossguard near the emitter. Before the chapter ends, she ends up removing her cape and sitting cross-legged on the floor of the bridge and calls upon the Force to help them in their mission. Chapter 5 introduces us to 2 new Jedi of the High Republic, Jedi Padawan Bel Zedifer, and his master Loden Greatstorm. Both are on their way to the surface of Hetzal Prime in a Vector, a ship described as minimally designed, meant to be piloted by Jedis who use the Force to control the ship. The ship has no shields, and there aren't any computers inside to help with flight. The Jedi use the Force for all of these features. All of the Vectors are the same, however, Bel and his master use the same one, as Bel recognizes some scoring along the wings from an ion storm they once flew through. While Bel doesn't say it out loud, he has named this Vector Nova. As they make their way to the surface, we learn about how the Jedi perceive the Force differently. It was described in a Comic-Con panel that each Jedi would have their own unique way of seeing the Force, and here we see our first example. Bel sees the Force as a small candle-lit flame, and as his connection to the Force grows, the flame becomes larger and surges into a blaze. Bel uses the Force to help him and his master find a place to land and begin helping the civilians down below. The Force guides him to a large structure, possibly owned by a rich family. Outside the tall walls and gates of the structure are other beings trying to break in, ideally to get to the yacht to make their way to safety. But the guards at the gates won't let them in. Bel and Loden then jump from the Vector, hoping to discover the reasoning behind this. Chapter 6 brings us aboard a long beam ship that has launched from the Third Horizon, known as Aurora 9. Here we meet a Nautolan, Captain Bright, who is attempting to see if they can shoot down the anomaly before it takes out a solar array station, regardless of the speed that the anomaly is traveling at. Petty Officer Inaman starts to question his captain's orders as he doesn't believe it to be possible, telling the captain that at the speed the anomaly is traveling, they would have a 1 in 3 chance of hitting it. Captain Bright orders to fire all 6 missiles aboard in hopes of doubling their chances of hitting the target, but all shots end up missing. Not long after, the solar array is destroyed as the object passes through it. Realizing that part of the solar array is still floating, Captain Bright orders a rescue mission, noting that there may or may not be survivors and the station could very well explode or implode at any moment. But still, an attempt must be made. He also explains that while he is a Nautolan, his tentacles pick up pheromones, and he understands that Petty Officer Inaman and Ensign Peoples are both afraid, but this task must still be attempted. Chapter 7 introduces us to several new Jedi. Tiami, who is a Duros, Mikkel Sutmani, who is an Ithorian, and the Wookiee Jedi Buryaga Agaburi, all of which are in Vectors headed towards the fruited moon of the Hetzal system. Their plan is to try to destroy the anomaly before it kills 4 billion lifeforms on the fruited moon. They all begin to connect through the Force to align their movements and fire a single shot simultaneously to destroy the anomaly. In this moment, we learn a little more about the Vector ships, including that they can only use the weapon system with a lightsaber key. The Jedi must plug their lightsaber into the Vector to fire the weapons, acting as a way to ensure that only Jedi may use these craft. However, right before they are able to take the shot, the Wookiee Jedi Buryaga calls out with overflowing emotion that he is feeling. Tiami says that it is okay if he chooses to back down from this part of the mission, as he is still a Padawan, and while this is a very overbearing mission, he can still take this opportunity to learn. However, he goes on to explain that the feelings that he is currently enduring are coming from the anomaly itself, and that it is not just a meteor, but it is a part of a ship with living beings still on board. Because of this, they cannot destroy it. The final chapter, Chapter 8, brings us back aboard the Third Horizon, where we get a look into how Master Avar Kriss sees the Force. It's described that the Force sings to her almost like a choir, and seeing the Force through song is how she uses it. The Third Horizon has landed in the ministerial residence of Aguirre City to begin helping the Hetzalian government. Avar Kriss begins to reach out to other Jedi through the Force, allowing her to be with every Jedi on Hetzal at the moment, as well as others that may be able to come to their aid, one of which is a Jedi by the name of Elzar Mon, one of Avar's oldest and closest friends in the Order. He is seen as a tinkerer with the Force and never likes to use the Force in the same way twice, making him a very unique Jedi. He only likes to do things on his own and will only work with 2 Jedi, Avar Kriss and another named Stellan Gios. Avar, Elzar, and Stellan all came up together at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant and were seen as inseparable, hoping that both will come to help the current Jedi. Avar also reaches out to Master Jara Mali, who is the future commander of the Jedi Quarter, and the Trandoshan Jedi Master, Skier. While reaching out, Avar finds herself relieved as to how they ended up near the Hetzal system. The Third Horizon had been kept up as the inspection tour of Starlight Beacon had been delayed. Because of this, Avar thinks to herself, if not for an overzealous Bith administrator, Hetzal would be dealing with this apocalypse on its own. Through Avar's Force connection with Tiami, she also learns of the anomaly being part of a ship with life still aboard. and begins to explain to the Bridge of the Third Horizon that this complicates everything, and that now they must try to turn this into a rescue mission on both sides. And that is a brief summary of the first 8 chapters of Light of the Jedi. Hopefully by now this will give you a good idea on whether or not this book, or the High Republic era in general, is the type of storytelling for you. I personally am excited to see what it brings to the Star Wars world, as this is an era that we have never covered throughout canon or Legends. But until the full novel releases on January 5th of 2021, that will be it for this video. Leave a comment telling me what you thought of these 8 chapters. Will you be getting Light of the Jedi, or will you pass on this one? Remember to like the video and subscribe if you haven't, and remember, the Force will be with you, always.